Welcome back. This is part 5 of the online tutorial series, and in this tutorial we're going to be looking at creating lighting effects using Designer's scene view. So there are two different views within Designer that you can use to create lighting effects. There's the scene view, which we're going to go through now, and then there's the timeline view, which we're going to go on to in a later tutorial. So the scene view out of the two views is probably the more simplistic way to create lighting effects. It's very good for static colors, but you can also introduce moving head fixtures and you can create some basic effects for them as well. So just a quick look around the scene view. Up in the left hand corner we have the different fixture types, followed by the groups that we've made in previous tutorials. Above that we have the magnification icons, but now we have two new buttons, Output Live and Output Live Control. Don't worry if you don't know what those are just in a moment. I'm going to come back to those in a little while. Over to the right, we have the scene menu, and underneath that, we'll see in a little while that we have some parameters which we can use to adjust the lighting effects. You'll notice that the fixtures are selectable, but by default, they're blacked out. When you do select them though, you get a nice little red perimeter to show that they're selected. And of course, you can select multiple fixtures using the lasso tool, or of course, by selecting their individual group. So to begin with, what I'm going to do first of all is I'm actually going to create a new scene. I'm going to do that by just going up to the right hand corner here and clicking on new. That's going to create a new scene for me. Now, if I wanted to, I can rename that, but for the moment, I'm just going to leave it as it is. I'm okay with it being called scene 1. The number down here is just the scene's number, but underneath that we have this group option. Now this could be particularly useful later on in your programming. A typical scenario of where you would use this is if you have, let's say, 5 scenes which you always want to end at a certain time, say like 11 o'clock. You could group all these scenes together so that instead of individually telling those scenes to end at a specific time, you could actually say, okay, all scenes in group A do something, end at the same time, or release as it's referred to in Designer. Again, we're going to come on to that in a little while later on in the tutorial, so don't worry about that too much now. Underneath that, we have a fade time. This is the time that it takes for the scene to fade in and out. And if we want to, we can apply something called a skew to that fade. And essentially, that's like a transition for that fade when obviously it's fading in or out. So I'm going to go ahead now. I'm going to select a set of fixtures. And you'll notice that underneath this, you'll now get these set of parameters, which we can use to adjust the fixture's output. So I've got a color picker here, which will allow me to select different colors. But you'll also notice I also have the RGB spin boxes just to the left of that, so I can punch in the exact values if I know exactly what I want them to be. We also get a HSI representation of that underneath. We'll have a virtual intensity slider. This will ramp the RGB and values in ratio together, up and down, as I move to a more higher or lower intensity. And then over to that, on the right hand side, we also have a set of sliders, which again, we can use to adjust different parameters. This is just another way of controlling the output. It's essentially the same as the color picker. It just looks a little bit different. So once I'm happy with that and I've got a color that I really like, I can go ahead and save that color. So let's get a turquoise up here. I'm going to go ahead and click save. And that's now going to add that to my palette. And if I want to, I can select another set of fixtures and I can use that color within that palette to set those fixtures to a certain look. Of course, if I wanted to, I can just use the color picker and adjust those. And I can go ahead and I can keep selecting fixtures within my layout and just keep giving them different colors. So there are different fixture types within this project file. So I just quickly want to have a look at those and how they behave. So if I select the tunable white fixtures here, I've got my intensity slider. And then I've also got my color temperature, which will allow me to adjust the temperature of the white balance. And with single white LEDs, as you probably expect, you just get a single intensity slider. So I did mention earlier in the tutorials that you can use moving heads. They're a little bit more complex. So I'm just going to quickly show you how those operate within this view. So I've brought in a moving head into this project file. You don't necessarily have to do that. It's more of a demonstration, but if you want to, feel free. So as soon as I select that, you'll notice that I get a lot more parameters. So I have an intensity, I've got a strobe, I can set the dimmer curve, a color if I want to. But you'll also notice that in the other tabs, there are parameters that I can adjust as well. So this is a moving head fixture and I can give it a position. So I've got like a XY grid here and I can just pick the position for where I want the fixture to look at and be placed within the scene. But I can also give it some basic effects by clicking on the effects button down here. So I can choose a different shape. So I'm going to go for the infinity. And then I can spread that out. And of course, I can position that wherever I want. And then I can give that a time for it to complete one loop. So 10s would signify 10 seconds. I also have options for controlling the beam and gobos. And I also have options for the utility parameters within that fixture as well. So once I'm done that, if I want to then go ahead and create a new scene, I can do so by just clicking new, and that's going to go ahead and that's going to create a new scene for me. If I want to organize those scenes, I can put them into a folder, so I can click new folder. And what I can go ahead now, and I can go ahead and just drop whatever scenes I feel are relevant into that folder, and then they'll be stored there. And that's just a good way of keeping them organized. So finally, once you're happy with a scene that you have come up with, if you want to, you can actually preview what that scene looks like on your fixtures, and you can do that using the controls I talked about earlier on, which are output live. So as soon as you click that, you'll get output in real life. My fixtures have just come on behind me. And then, of course, that's going to give you a good indication if the colors that you've picked on screen are the right for your project. Okay, that's pretty much it for the scene view. Thank you very much, and hope to see you in the next one.